Let me bring you back because still talking about education. I know that I think in 2014 there was a report on a website called I think University World News. They said that they focused on Ghana and they found out that 75,000 Nigerian children were studying there. But as of 2017, there was another report which did show that Nigeria spent 300 billion naira annually for students or study in Ghana. So, but I've never heard any minister of education in this country ask the question, okay, why are Nigerians moving here? What do we need to do? What are those countries doing? The African countries, what do they have there that we can't put in here, call a national conference or summit or so? I've never heard that. Is it that we're missing the point about the figures associated with all of this that we're losing the country?
Just like the Honorable said, the little amount we're budgeting for education, whether at the state level or federal level, if you combine them together, it is less than 10% of what Nigerians are spending on the university level alone to try and train their children abroad. And these are very upper class and maybe a few middle class that can afford that. Less than 10% of sovereign budget of Nigeria, both at the state level and federal level for education, accounts for what few, 3% are spending to send their children to university. Some are now beginning to send their children to even primary school abroad and secondary school abroad. So it's no longer just university or medical schools. So it's a challenge that we really need to look at holistically. It's a challenge that we need to look at holistically because we're sending to a child in a Nigerian university, even in the hostel, official hostel of the school, you need to go with I don't pass my neighbor generator.
It's
as bad as that.
To butt in since. Let's go ahead.
If you don't mind me saying this, it depends on how you decide to look at it. If we have a lot of people going to study in Ghana, fantastic. I don't want to see it as bad omen. But the quality of education gotten there, what do we do with it? If it's better than Nigeria, fine. You see a lot of Chinese, when you go to schools, if you look at schools in England, in America, in Australia, you see a lot of Chinese going there to study. What do they do with it? They take that standard of education back to China. And of course, we've seen what that has, transformed into for China. So it depends on how there's always a positive in every negative. We're dealing with the negative now. How can we now harness the positive that exists in there?
Bringing to mind the fact that you said, the example you gave about China now, points to the fact that there is a national ethos that China has. Look, for doing this is the direction we're going.
Correct.
Do we have any such legislation, or can we evolve such a legislation that says, look, this is the direction Nigeria is going and this is how the individual states will contribute to it?
I'll say something to you. Sometimes you have to do what you have to get what you want. We're all Nigerians. It belongs to all of us. We cannot leave, if we're not happy with how certain things are being done, we can't leave it in the hands of just a certain number of people. How do I mean? In Canada a few years ago, there's a movement, there was a serious issue with drunk driving. And lives were being lost. A few mothers came together because they felt the lawmakers weren't doing what they were meant to do. And they came up with something called MADD, M-A-D-D, Mothers Against Drunken Drivers or Drunk Drivers. At the end of the day, they drafted the bill, they took it, they adopted somebody to sponsor the bill, and it became law. It became a movement. From Canada, it moved across the rest of the world. Now, if we see that we have enough doctors, we have enough lawyers, we have fantastic people like this who are critical thinkers, who can come up with these kind of things, and say, you know what, we're going to adopt a lawmaker, and you're going to do this. This is how, sometimes, yes, Bobu, right, you will have to understand that sometimes Bobu would have to rise from the bottom to the top in this case. It's something that has to be sorted out. How do we interact with our lawmakers? How do we force them to do that which we want them to do?
But it would seem to suggest to anyone who is maybe listening to us now that there are just so many disjointed parts. Mm-hmm. How do we move from that to have a link that just connects everything together? Look at it, be it in the education sector, be it in the healthcare sector, because that seems to be a major problem. People don't understand what the policy is, what the direction is, what they think it is. Mm-hmm. How do we link all of this together such that education, for instance, will not have people aspiring to send their children abroad, even from primary school level, according to him, to have an education?
I completely appreciate where you're coming from. There are platforms through which one can do this. You have committees of the House. How often do we meet with the committees of the House? If you look on the TV, I know a lot of people feel really upset. Even I, sometimes I'm thinking, I get frustrated. Even while in the House, I was frustrated sometimes thinking, come on guys, we need to look at things from this angle. And that's where you have to understand that you dump the partisan politics and you have to cross over to Pt.2, whatever party, to say, listen, we need to get this done.
Does that suggest that politicians don't really have the interests of Nigerians at heart?
I wouldn't say that.
From practice, from what we see them do, not what they say.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't want to say politicians don't have. There are quite a number of fantastic lawmakers who some didn't return for one reason or the other. And that's the beauty of democracy. The people elect who the people want. You know, that challenge, as said earlier on, and I will continue to hammer on that, has been the issue of not being able to know where politics stops and where governance starts.
It also perhaps underscores the question of, do the lawmakers themselves even know how important at the state level now their tasks are? Because, I mean, listening to you now, I feel like going to the National Assembly or State House of Assembly myself, because the job being done there is actually very, very important. But do you think the lawmakers at the state level in particular know the importance of what their tasks are in order to be able to help the directive with policies that can, you know, activate a lot of things?
I've worked with several colleagues in the past. Even as I am right now, I still have colleagues, even though I'm not in the House currently, but I still work with a few members of the House where there's a bill we're working on right now which has to do with education, and we're pushing it through them. And that's why I said sometimes you have the Chamber of Commerce. There are different bodies that one can go through in engaging them to say, listen, this is what we want to do by identifying it. You had said earlier, you highlighted something earlier on where you talked about how a lot of states now have this economic summits and things like that. The issue is this: what happens at the end of the summit? Is it just a talk summit? What are the resolutions? Then what do you do from there? Is that where it ends? The whole point of the summit is to highlight, to identify, highlight, and find a resolve to the problems facing each state. And now, take for example, we're talking about employment rate. I am looking at a situation where NYSC, I think, has outlived its relevance. NYSC was brought about to try and keep Nigeria as one. But they say the idle hand is the devil's workshop. And besides, who are the people who will keep Nigeria as one? Will it only be those who go to school? Are they the ones who don't see Nigeria as one? Use the funds for that. If you graduate from school and you decide, listen, you know what, I want to learn a trade. I want to start a technology company and things like that, especially now that we're talking about farming and technology.
How long will it take us to reverse 6 people falling into poverty every 1 hour? I'll get your thoughts.
That's a strong question. Again, it's about national consciousness. It's very frustrating that even up till now, we as a nation have not accepted that number.
We're still living in denial.
This is the United
Nations.
Nations.
We have not accepted that number. And as a consequence of that, during the timeout, you said that in your small estate, this year alone, 6 people, and this, I guess these are house owners, so maybe middle income level, have relocated out of the country. And this is the story of Nigeria. So one is that we have not accepted that number, but it is a reality facing us. So until we accept that, and we know that we have a serious agenda in our hand, then we begin to say, what is the national team to begin to deal with it? That's the reason why people will school in the US, they come back 3 months, they relocate back. Because we don't have that system that absorbs. You talk about China, you know how people will go and school in America and copy their technology and whatever and come back and replicate. Because they have this national system through which you can, that there's what they call transition can I say, transition model where you learn skill, education, and you come back to your country. But our elites take their children abroad, make sure they school there. It's either they remain after. The ones that come back already have job in NNPC, in CBN or whatever, unadvertised. That is the sorry state of Nigeria.
What can we do about our population? Can we leverage on it? And in what way? What will be the impediments that we need to overcome? We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's our concluding moments now. And Mr. Wani, you know, we're talking about population. And this demographic research says that in 2030, Nigeria's population will reach 263 million. That's about 44.1% higher than what we had in 2015. And that's going to make us one of the fastest growing populations in the world. Now, ordinarily, they think this is a strength that we can leverage on. Do you see that happening? And how can we take advantage of that?
China and India have told us, or they taught us, that population can be an asset. But it's not, it doesn't fall from heaven like that. You have to do something to a population to convert it to an asset. And that population must be a population that is educated, that is skilled, that have the capacity to consume what is right, that have the capacity to buy. These are the things we are lacking, making our whole population growth and number a liability, not just in Africa or West Africa, but the whole world. Because we have the largest number of poor people in the world that cannot even spend up to $1. $1 is about 350, 360 naira. Having said that, and you see some of our cities like Lagos, Abuja. Abuja is one of the fastest growing cities in the world by population, about 6.5% every year in Abuja. How much is the road expanding? How much is the rail expanding? How much is the market expanding? The schools, is it expanding commensurate to the growth in population? So you look at all of these things, we're sitting on a keg of gunpowder. And I believe that making our population work for us is all about education, making sure that we're healthy, which is health sector, and education, the right education that imparts the right skill in the 24th century, driven by technology. This is the way to go.
Honorable Bush, given the bureaucracy in governance and what some people think, lawmakers need to, you know, most of them rid themselves of this mindset of what's in it for us rather than the country. Do you ever see them getting that mindset way behind them and putting the country first?
Well, not all lawmakers are like that. We're human beings. You would always see some who fall short, and you would always see, I'd be a hypocrite if I sit here and tell you, oh, that's not the case. You would see some who would fall short, and you would see some who actually have this. The whole thing comes down to quality of representation and quality of population. I remember I listened to some that said Lagos State's population at one point in time was about 300,000. From 300,000 in less than 30 years, blowing up to, in less than 40 years, blowing up to, I think, close to about 21, 22 million right now. Nobody saw that. However, we now have case studies to work with. We've seen, like you said, China. We've seen India. We've seen so many countries growing to that. I was saying earlier on about how do we take advantage of, for example, the union we have, the ECOWAS union, what is happening. He said earlier on, and I kind of agreed with it, to say, how do we get each state, each region to harness what its natural...
He says the laws are tying
I would always tell you that. I said earlier on that you have the Governors Forum. What is the whole point of the Governors Forum? It's to identify these problems, relate with their lawmakers, and at the end of the day, you have, every time there's a Governors Forum, you see 36 governors sat to discuss issues of Nigeria.
Okay, well, that's where we need to anchor at this point. Honorable Dayo Bush, former member of the House of Reps from 2007 up until 15, and Dr. Vincent Wani, a business and investment consultant. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on today. That's the show today. We'll keep focusing on this and ensure that well, the governors, the president-elects, all of them do what they can to get the people at least better than where they are at the moment. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Don't forget, you should pray for them also, so that they succeed in this one. I'm Gimba Umar.
I am Akine here saying, have a wonderful day.
Well, slices of cake are in order, and I'm not talking about a national cake. Thank you for watching. I'm Maukwe Ogun Yusuf. See you later.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this program are those of the maker and do not reflect the views, opinions, and endorsement of Channels Television.